The Ken Pittman Show, 1420 WBSM, New Bedford.
Okay, we're back, and I have in the studio with me both candidates for the Democratic Party running for the soon-to-be vacated seat, the 9th Bristol, representing the Bristol County, the 9th seat in the House of Representatives. And I have Steve Medeiros and Ed Camara here. Welcome, both of you.
It's actually Pacheco.
What's that, Camara?
Yeah.
That's a force of habit. Sorry about that.
Ed Camara, good guy.
He is a good guy. He is a great guy. Ed Pacheco, my apologies. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, but we decided before it was decided how this was going to go, and so the opening remarks will be begun by Mr. Pacheco, and the closing remarks will be the opposite.
Sure.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you plan to do as a state representative?
Sure.
Ed.
So thank you, Ken, for having us today. And more importantly, thank you for giving the voters of the 9th Bristol District an opportunity to hear who the people are that are asking for their vote. I think that's very important. And there hasn't really been a lot of dialogue about the candidates or what we represent. So I think this is a great venue. So, my name is Ed Pacheco, and I'm a Democrat running for the state representative seat in the 9th Bristol District. And I believe that public service is something that comes from the heart, not something that you can be kind of talked into by your friends or your family. It's about showing up, it's about listening, and it's about doing the hard work. So I'm married. I have 6 daughters.
Wow.
Yeah. 4 of them have graduated from Dartmouth schools. 1 graduated from Bristol Aggie. 1 graduated from Vogue. So we've covered pretty much all of the schools on the South Coast. I'm a homeowner. I'm a former small business owner. And currently for the past, let's call it 16 years, I've worked in transportation. Specifically, in my role now, I work as the director of a nonprofit's transportation division, where we oversee 7 locations across the South Coast from the Cape Cod area down here to Fall River. We transport about 200 to 400 people a day, and those are individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I have a firsthand experience when it comes to solving problems for real people, dealing with real budgets, real consequences. And I know what it is like to have to make a payroll and manage employees and meet regulations and work with stretched or limited resources to make an organization better. So those are part of the reason why I'm running for state representative, because Dartmouth has a tremendous opportunity for development and growth, and we're on the precipice of hitting that. So I want to be honest, though. After managing a transportation company for quite a bit of time, if somebody tells you that they can't get there faster, it's time to change the driver. So, I'm running because I want to be able to invest in working families, invest in working people, strengthen our schools and infrastructure. Dartmouth, in particular, has a real challenge coming forward with our wastewater situation, and then parallel products in New Bedford is still a lingering problem for New Bedford.
All right. Thank you. Ed, Steve Medeiros.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you for having me, and appreciate being here. And thank you, Ed, as well, for being here. So I've always had a sense of public service. I've been involved in the community since I was young, since I was in my youth group at my church. Just always been the person to volunteer. When I went to school in Boston, I also was volunteering up there. You'd always find me volunteering at a place. Actually, one organization I still volunteered for, even after college, I would drive up just to continue volunteering at community servings. And so it's just been this kind of part of my DNA. And I learned that from my parents and my grandparents. I'm a 4th generation resident of Dartmouth. But I did live in New Bedford for a while. When I moved back here from school, I lived in New Bedford for probably about 7 years. And, I've worked across the whole South Coast as a real estate agent. And one of the things that I've been able to do is get to understand the real needs of families, because I see their struggle every single day. We feel it every single day in our household. And so the thing that I've kind of enjoyed the most in this campaign was actually getting out and actually knocking on doors and talking to residents. That's the thing that I probably was most scared of, was just randomly knocking on someone's door. But people have been very engaging. They've wanted to share their stories, share their concerns with us. And so for me, it was really about getting to understand everyone's needs. Not labeling somebody for a particular party or anything like that, just knocking on the door and saying, what's your biggest concern? And then that's how we establish our pillars, because people ask, like, why don't you have anything on the website when we first announced? And I said, I don't want to put what I want out there. I want to put out there what the people want. And so I made it a focus of actually listening to residents and listening to their concerns. And that's what our pillars of our campaign are based on. I've got a ton of experience. I don't like to talk about myself and my background, but I do have a lot of experience in leadership. I've been up at the State House advocating. I've testified in front of committees at the State House on various housing issues to try to keep housing affordable. And that's something for me. I think that shows a lot of experience that I can. The day one, I'm ready to do the job. I'm ready to get up there and actually do it. I've actually proposed legislation, and had representatives actually, take our legislation and move it forward. So that's important.
Okay, thank you both for your opening statements. My question, and we'll start with you, Steve. When you go to Beacon Hill for the first term, I think you'll both agree that there'll be a learning curve, and so that you're going to do a lot more listening than speaking. Traditionally, that's just been how it goes up there. When you think about who to go to as far as advice, who's on that list, and would Chris Markey be somebody that you would feel comfortable calling to see if he has the answers to something you're wondering about? Yeah, no, I thankfully I've been able to meet most of our SouthCoast delegation and kind of foster relationships with them on the other side of the table, advocating for private property rights, home ownership, and trying to keep housing affordable. Chris is one of the people that I first started advocating with because he was my rep, and then over time I got to start really working with other reps like Tony Cabral, Mark Montigny, Senator Rodrigues, and so for me it's I want to talk to a lot of different people. That's kind of how I've always operated. I don't look and say, okay, I want to talk to one person, which I think Chris will be a great resource because he understands the district probably better than most because he's worked it, since 2010. But I want to be able to go up there, forge relationships with not just the SouthCoast delegation, but across the state, because that's the only way you get things accomplished up there. All right, Ed, your answer?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that when you're a freshman state representative that you're going to go up to Beacon Hill and conquer the world by yourself. That's not how it works. You have to build a coalition of legislators to get anything done on the South Coast, not only just because you're a freshman, but because of the demographic of the area. In particular, Dartmouth is, 9th Bristol District is one of 160 state representatives. Anyone that says that they can go up there and do what they're going to do by themselves is going to be in for a rude awakening. Now, people that I would partner with, absolutely. I have good working relationships from my years of experience in the area with people like Chris Markey and Tony Cabral and Mark Montigny and Chris Hendricks and on and on and on. And during this campaign, I've been building that network even beyond just SouthCoast with representatives like Lisa Field and Jim Hawkins. So, you have to be able to reach across not only your district, but across the aisle, because a lot of the issues that are impacting our region aren't exclusive to just the 9th Bristol District, Dartmouth and New Bedford. They're across the coast. Yeah, your votes will absolutely reach the entire Commonwealth. Okay, when you talk about affordability, which has been an issue now going, it's almost 10 years old now, this incredible imposition on people trying to earn enough and keep up with the bills and have any discretionary spending. It's been difficult for more people as we go forward. What do you think a state representative's proper role would be? I'll start with you, Ed Pacheco. So I understand firsthand what the affordable housing crisis is like, and I'll tell you why. I have, as I said, 6 daughters. My oldest daughter was fortunate that she and her husband could buy a home together. They live in Acushnet. But my next daughter, who's an educator at Taunton High School, 27 years old, can't afford to live on her own. And that's not just in my house. That's across the state and specifically around the 9th Bristol district. So when we talk about affordable housing, it's a personal issue that I understand intimately. So, it's tough to say because we had back in 2024 a $5.16 billion bond bill that went out to help create these opportunities for affordable housing. And for some reason, in the past 2 years, only about half of that has been accessed. So, we know that we need housing. We know that we're going to need at least 222,000 more units of affordable housing over the next 10 years. But we have to be careful on how we're doing it.
So what's the role of a state rep here?
The role of the state rep is to make sure that we're taking the opportunities that we have available to us, like this bond bill, and working with our local government leaders, our city leaders, our town leaders, to make sure that we're encouraging these developments, but in a tone that's respectful and that they can support in their communities.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I personally want to have a good relationship with each of the two communities that are going to serve. So New Bedford and Dartmouth. I want to meet with the leadership in those different areas. The chiefs of police, which I've already met with Dartmouth, and meet with the school departments and meet with the DPWs and the select board and the city council, and figure out from them, where do you need the resources? Where do you see things that we need to solve? And then be able to take those concerns and go up to the State House and actually propose legislation that's directly related to what the communities need. When it comes to housing and affordability, housing's part of the affordability thing, but it's also utility costs that are high. And so that needs to get reined in. Mass Save, I think when it first was instituted, was actually a good program. I took advantage of it early on, but I look at it now and I say, this has become something that's bigger than what it was intended to be. And I think we need to reevaluate what's happening with Mass Save so we can cut down some of those costs. We also have to find ways to just make utilities more affordable. So it's meeting with the stakeholders. The big thing is not going up there and telling them we're going to do this. You have to listen to the people that are affected by this and try to find compromise. And that's something that I do on a daily basis in my job. Is I have to, I work with a seller who wants to sell a home and a buyer wants to buy a home, and you got to try to get them to agree. The seller wants the most, the buyer wants the least, and you need to get them to agree on something. And so it's finding the compromise where people can meet in the middle somewhere. And that's really what I want to bring to the table is working with all sides to try to say, okay, what can we actually move forward that's going to get people to agree?
Okay.
So
this has to do with the call by the people, 72%, to have an audit on Beacon Hill. Steve Medeiros, what is your position on if that ever comes down to, the representatives, if there's ever a vote, how would you vote on this?
So I voted for the audit back when that was on the ballot. 72% of us voted for that. Right. So that's something that should be done. Now, what most people don't realize, and I didn't realize until after I'd voted and I actually decided to run for the seat, is that they're actually audited every year by PricewaterhouseCoopers. Most recently, it's an independent audit that's already done. Now, the auditor is doing her job trying to get the audit accomplished on behalf of the voters, which is great. I think the challenge that I see right now is it's become very political. And when I look at an audit process, I've been part of audit processes for different organizations I've been part of. It's about facts. It's about numbers and the details. So I don't think bringing a political tone to it. I think we just need to get the audit done the way it's supposed to be done. And if we had an independent auditor, an additional one come in, I think that's even better. But if the auditor is going to do it, I think we need to make sure that the things that are intended to be audited are audited. Right now, the courts actually said what can and can't be audited. And I think that we need to, if I was to have to vote on it, I would vote in favor of it. Yeah.
I think, and I'm going to ask the same question. I think a lot of people feel that, there's an audit, but it's appointed by the very people that are being audited, the quote unquote independent auditor. So I'm not, and I don't even know if that's true or not, but some people don't feel that it's actually independent and that it's not what they wanted. They wanted state auditor to do this. So how would you vote on this if it comes up again on the floor?
Same way. I mean, I was one of the voters that voted in favor of this. It wasn't 72% of Democrats. It wasn't 72% of Republicans. It was 72% of all of Massachusetts residents that got together, which in itself is remarkable, and said, this is what we want as the electorate. And I think it's unfortunate that it fell in the hands of just a few people that have decided that this wasn't important enough for them for whatever reason. What I think this indicates is that people are saying that they're tired of lack of transparency and they want to know how the sausage is made. They want to see where the money is going, because we send a tremendous amount of money to Beacon Hill every year, and we're getting about 26 cents back on every dollar, where we should probably be getting somewhere around 34 cents on the dollar. And that makes a big difference when you're looking at how you're running a state or a city budget. That extra cents could make a difference between the city of New Bedford being able to keep Station 9 open or closing it. It could make the difference between Dartmouth Public Schools being able to keep additional educators in their roles. So, if I'm there and it comes up in front of it, I'm voting in favor of it.
All right, so that's my next question. I think it's been brought to the public's attention more recently than the last decade or more, how the funding has not really increased since the early 90s for cities like New Bedford when it comes to the state budget and then local funding. It hasn't happened. Are you going to be more proactive than maybe your predecessors?
Yeah, here's the thing. We know that Chapter 70 money, the formula is broken. We know that the formula for Chapter 90 is broken. But how do you fix that? Well, you have to build a coalition in the State House. Again, we're talking about 160 individuals that all have different importance and agendas for their districts. But at the end of the day, it all equals out that, in order for us to get the money that we're entitled to, we need to work together. Okay. So that's what we need to do, is build that coalition.
All right, I will ask Steve Medeiros that very question again once we return from the commercial break. You're listening to Ken Pittman, and this is the 9th Bristol House of Representatives debate between the two Democratic candidates. We'll be right back.
Stay up to date on the latest news.
I follow the news pretty much throughout the day.
New Bedford's news talk station, WBSM.
This is Manny Resendiz reminding you to jumpstart your mornings with the Retirement Factory, Saturdays at 6 and Sundays at 10 here on 1420 WBSM.
All right, we're back. So, Steve, I'm going to ask the same question that I asked Ed Pacheco, which has to do with not the audit. Where were we? I forget. Wait a minute. What's wrong with me? It was an impromptu question because I'm just letting the momentum of the conversation take place.
I believe we were talking about access to the legislature in terms of building the coalition.
No, we were beyond that. Wow. How did I do that?
Oh.
What's wrong with me, Steve?
I don't know.
Ed?
I was waiting for you to re-ask the question.
The off-air conversation kind of distracted me, but I'm going to ask a new question then because I'll have to come back to it. I can't believe this. Yeah. All right.
We'll be out of the studio when you think about it.
Oh, yeah, come back, guys.
Hey, come back.
Yeah. So are either of you, what's your position on the Protect Act, this ICE Protect Act? Immigration is still an important issue in Massachusetts. Governor Healy has now gotten this bill across to make sure that ICE cannot, arrest people coming out of courthouses, hospitals, schools, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. There's two different kinds of ICE warrants. One is judiciary, which has the power to go to a private home. Yep. The other, and most of them, are administrative, which means they have to get them where they know they're going to be. So this, and some are concerned it oversteps state powers and all that stuff. But how do you fall on this Protect Act? Would you have voted yes?
So when it comes to immigration, I think this is something that most people have a pretty strong opinion on one way or the other.
Yeah.
For me, I think when it comes to immigration, obviously I think, if someone's going to be here, they should be here legally. If someone is not here legally, I do believe that we have basic human rights, that they talk about in the Constitution, and so for me, I want to see that we're giving people like at least the fair, like to be taken care of as an individual, and not just scooped up and not given some due process. I feel like that the way it's been handled, you've seen some deaths, which unfortunately are happening in other parts of the country, Maine, most recently, and I think we need to, have a better process. I think when someone is taken and put in a facility, that they have someone who's there if they don't speak the language, that they have someone who's an interpreter. Like, they need to be given some of the things that we would expect anyone would want. If it was one of my family members that was happening to, I would expect that they'd be treated like a human being. Yeah. And so I think that's important. I think that people do need to be here legally, but I also think that there are people who just want to just not even follow the process. They just want to get them out, and I just don't think that's right. I think that our state has been trying to do a good job of treating people like human beings, and I think the PROTECT Act is a way to kind of do that, because other parts of the country are seeing it where people aren't being given those basic human rights. So.
All right, Ed Pacheco, your answer?
Well, actually, I want to get an answer from Steve, because he didn't actually answer the question. Would you have voted in favor of the PROTECT Act?
I think he just did.
I just said I would.
I think you said it was in favor. Yeah.
All right. So yes, I would absolutely voted in favor of the PROTECT Act.
Okay.
My wife is and her family are immigrants. They came here from the Brazil back in the early 1980s, and they followed a process to get here. They had to file the paperwork. They had to have sponsors. They had to have living accommodations. They had to find work. And, they had to get their green cards, and they had to go for their citizenships. There is a process in place. We are a nation of laws. And the most important thing is, though, that we're applying these laws across the board to everyone. That doesn't indicate that you can pull up in a van, throw a sack over someone's head, and throw them in the back of a van and make them disappear by, and then just letting family members know later that you have them in custody because you believe that they are here without documentation. So, we've had some instances of a mistaken identity, including that case up in the north end of New Bedford, where they smashed a window, pulled a guy out of the car, and other than happening to be brown and look like what they thought the name of the person was, they had the wrong person. We're having to respond to these types of situations because of the behavior of these ICE agents. So the PROTECT Act is a necessary response, and I would have voted for it.
Okay. All right. What would you do differently than what's been done around here for jobs? I'll start with you, Ed Pacheco. It seems as though this South Coast has always lagged a little bit behind Central Boston, which has an incredible advantage for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. What would you do differently, or what ideas do you have to bring jobs to your district?
So a couple of things. I have a great amount of small business experience, obviously having been a small business owner myself. I was also an ambassador for the Chamber of Commerce for almost 10 years, and I was recognized for my support back in 2022. So when it comes to small business, we need to get some of the regulations, depending on what the business is, out of the way of small business. We fee our small businesses to death, and a lot of it is unnecessary. So, for example, every year we require a small business to pay a $500 filing fee with the Commonwealth to just say, here I am and I exist. No value added to it at all.
So you're talking about professional licensures?
And no, this is just a business license
Okay.
through the state to say that I'm here and I exist.
Mm-hmm.
We won't even begin to talk about the local licensing fees that are applied. So the first thing that I think we need to do on a state level is reevaluate these fees that we have that don't add any value to small business at all. I could see if they were getting something for it, but just to be by virtue of sitting here as a small business, trying to make a living for yourself, your family, it doesn't work for me. We need common sense funding if we're going to look at it that way, because that's really what it comes down to. We should really look at reducing some of those fees. The other thing is we now have a rail system that connects people from Boston to New Bedford, and it's going well. But we could certainly do better by recruiting, larger employers. We have some great spaces up at the industrial parks that wouldn't change the character. We still have a lot of mill buildings that are open and that are available that could be redeveloped. Those are the types of things that I would focus on as state representative and trying to recruit those kinds of companies here, knowing that their workforce could get down here as well.
Okay. Steve, same question.
Sure. So obviously, we need a strong small business economy because without that, I think your community really falls apart. That's the backbone of what we have. I think one of the unique ways we could do this is when it comes to our farms and the seaport. Like, can we keep our food in our local communities and actually have farm to table type things, and have where you have these farms and they're maybe supplying the food to the schools, or they're supplying, you have more focus on keeping the food local. So now you're not spending money on shipping it out of the area. That cuts down on the cost of the food. So that's one of the areas I think that we could work on. Obviously, when it comes down to businesses, you need to find ways to find, I think, some tax incentives to bring in business, because when you bring in a business, they're going to be now paying into bringing money into the economy. So if you can find some tax incentives to get them in initially, long term, some bigger businesses, the mill spaces are great, industrial parks great, but other locations that we can put them. And it's not, the district is important, but it's about the South Coast in general, right? So when you look at Dartmouth, Taunton, New Bedford, Fall River, Dartmouth is between those three gateway cities. What's good for the South Coast is good for Dartmouth, is good for the other communities on the South Coast. And so when you actually can have something, maybe, we're voting on something at the State House, it may not be something where a business wants to come in into the South Coast, into directly into New Bedford, but they may want to go into Fall River or Taunton. That does help because it's, again, within that same area. I think that's important. I think that when we look at the businesses that are currently down here that are actually kind of those key businesses, one of the, I think, our South Coast Hospitals is one of the is kind of a big cog on the South Coast. Big employer, yep. And so if we're able to have more businesses like that invest in and really want to make their home here, I think that's important as well. So we need to find that.
All right. Well, in particular, your party, that you both belong to, the Democratic Party, I think it's a tough sell when you talk about TIFs, tax incentives, because I think a lot of your base is under the impression, and rightfully so in some cases, that some corporations don't appear to be paying their fair share, right? So if you're going to offer them tax incentives, are you going to help the base to understand the message that, if it makes sense, if it's actually going to bring in more money to get them here instead of out in Leominster or somewhere else, how do you plan on selling that to your own party?
So for me, I'm not a huge proponent of TIFs. Just for that reason.
This is Ed Pacheco speaking.
Pacheco. Sure. So I'm not a proponent of using a TIF as a band-aid for everything. No, not necessarily in any case. But I think it should be sparingly, and there should actually be a real return on investment. If you go out on the street corner with a sign that says, relocate here, we'll give you TIFs, you're going to get, you cast a wide net, you're going to get a lot of fish. The question is it the fish that you want? And we have to make sure that if we're going to be offering people TIFs, that, one, the jobs that they're going to be creating are going to be regional specific, that to the area that is going to be impacted. So if it's a host city like New Bedford or Dartmouth, there should be stipulations in there that a certain percentage of employees for that project should be from those towns, because we're giving you the incentive to be here. We need to look out for our people first. I do believe in regionalization, but if they're going to be doing business in the district, 9th Bristol, New Bedford, and Dartmouth, then the benefit has to be for that region as well. And then the others can come in behind that. But At the end of the day, I have to make sure that the residents in my district are able to buy their groceries, pay their utilities, pay their rent, and their medications. So that's where my priority would be.
How do you message that to your base about tips and prove to them if you feel that the tip is going to make sense for the community? It's a tough sell in some circles. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so very similar to what Ed said, it's about making sure that the jobs are here, number one, and it's going to create enough jobs to overcome that, what the cost of that tax incentive is, right? So if you're going to have a tax incentive and you're going to create jobs, does that offset each other financially, right? So you have to look at the financial numbers and see, does it make sense for that? Most importantly, it's for the everyday people in the district, do we have workers that are going to be able to be employed? Do we have people who are going to be able to, maybe it's not directly the employees of those businesses, but does that then have some tangential effect on other small businesses in the area that maybe provide support services for those larger businesses that are coming in? And so it's a kind of a ecosystem, a SouthCoast ecosystem of jobs and opportunity, and that's what we have to create when we're doing it. I don't think you should just be saying, okay, we're going to have a tax incentive and anybody can come in. It has to make sense for the district and for the region as a whole to create those jobs for the people here.
All right. And Steve, I'll ask you a question. When it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to all these different issues in Massachusetts, what committees would you hope to get on in the House?
Specifically for law enforcement, or just
I'm just giving an example. Law enforcement is one. Ways and means. I mean, which ones would you hope to be on? Judiciary, you name it.
Yeah, well, there are some that are pretty hard to get on, so I don't know if I'd be able to get on on some of the big ones.
Where do you think you would best serve the district? Which committees?
Well, obviously, anything with housing. I have 23 years of housing expertise. I've been already advocating for a long time, and I think it's actually a benefit. Like, I can step in day one and actually start working towards fixing this housing crisis in Massachusetts. That is something that no one else can bring that to the table with the experience that I have. I understand housing at a much deeper level. I've already advocated and had bills passed that have helped homeowners in the South Coast, eliminating certain things, proposing certain things that would actually help with housing. So a lot of those, a lot of the housing issues I think would be great. In general, I'm the type of person, I like to learn. So no matter what committee I'm on, I'm going to take the time to learn about what that committee is about. I'm going to want to talk to the stakeholders that are typically in front of that committee so I can understand their concerns from all different angles. So that way I can be a well-versed and well-educated representative. For me, I'm just excited to get up there and actually continue the work that I've already been doing for the last, 15 years, meeting with legislators. Now I'll be on the other side of the table listening to the concerns and hopefully being able to, bring those concerns together.
All right. Ed Pacheco, have you put any thought into what committees you think you would best serve the community?
Absolutely. So for me, one of the biggest
which?
Ways and Means is not even an option for a freshman. Anybody that thinks they're going to roll up into
absolutely
and get into the Ways and Means committee is just not
even
realistic.
if your friend's the chairman, right?
Stay home if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
For me, I'm looking at things that are more practical that I know that I could use to impact the region and capitalize on my experience. Before I roll in that, though, I have a question in regards to. So Steve is an active realtor. He's been a realtor for a number of years.
Well, you'll have an opportunity to ask a question after this.
Okay. So for my big ones are healthcare financing. Healthcare is crushing the people of Massachusetts. And depending on who your employer is, everyone pays something a little bit different than what the others are. But at the end of the day, a lot of people still have very high copays. They have deductibles. They have medical copays. They have vision care. They have dental care. They have riders for cancer. People are getting buried by the cost of healthcare. So I would want to sit on the healthcare committee. The second one would be bonding, but specifically for capital expenditures and estate assets, because Dartmouth and New Bedford both have wastewater issues that are going to be significantly high project costs.
Okay.
And you're going to want to be on that and help be able to direct those funds to your district. So being on those projects, on those committees, makes the most sense. And then the last one, which is close to my heart, and in part because of the industry that I'm working in, would be the Children and Families with Disabilities Committee. We need a tremendous amount of advocacy for individuals that have disabilities. There was a great bill that is trying to make its way through the House now that would require wheelchair companies to repair wheelchairs within a timely manner. There are people that literally are waiting 1 to 2 years to have their mobility devices repaired, which constrains people to their houses. It doesn't allow them to live life to their absolute fullest capability, and it's reprehensible. So those are my big three.
All right. Now we come to the questions that each of you will ask of the other. And I will start with you, Ed Pacheco. You have a question for Steve Medeiros.
Sure. So just to kind of allude, follow up on what we were just talking about. So Steve does have a tremendous amount of experience in realty. He's been doing it for 20, 25 years. He knows the ins and outs of it. And so my question would be is, how does he propose to maintain being a realtor and running his company and still be able to sit on these types of committees without being in conflict of interest between taking votes on things that would ultimately impact his own business?
So I don't think there'd be a conflict of interest, no different than you have an experience in transportation or in the services that you provided. That means every single person that has anything that they've been involved in would be a conflict of interest. Chris Markey sat in the Judiciary Committee. He's an attorney. So I don't see how there's a conflict there. I actually think that's an asset. Like most families here on the South Coast, Dartmouth and New Bedford, my family doesn't have the luxury of sitting back on one income. My family has to work every day. I have children that are going to college right now. I have two that are going to be in college together. And the House of Representatives was actually built on regular working people and, nurses, farmers, tradespeople. And, I think that being able to balance that, I've balanced that my entire career, where I've done mostly a lot of service work. And I think that doing that service work and then being able to still work in my business, I have people that will be able to work on that. I have an assistant. I have other people that will be working with me that I'll be focused primarily and 100% on being a state rep first and foremost. And the real estate will be a side thing that fills in it. And actually, the vast majority of representatives up there all have an additional job to make ends meet because, unfortunately, surviving on one income isn't something that we can do.
But here's the issue that I see with this. You would literally be taking votes that would impact your revenue. So,
but as he's pointing out, that could be true for every rep who has another job or what their expertise is in.
To a certain extent, there are different industries that it would. So, for example, if you were a nurse, right, do you make a profit directly on being a nurse, and then if you sit on a nursing committee? We're talking about a direct retail sale here. Things where you have a 3% commission on a $600,000 house, you're going to walk away.
There's a cap on what your rebuttal can be, but sure. I think we get the gist of it. Of course.
So Ed, I don't understand how there would be a vote from a committee on what I would be working on with a particular client. That's not something that's going to be happening. What we're working on, like the bills that we passed, like we fought transfer taxes. We actually, right now, that I have a couple of bills that I'm ready to work on to have like first-time home buyer savings accounts, right? That helps the average home buyer and it helps home sellers as well because there are more people out there who can buy their home.
Wasn't that already created?
No, it's not. Nope. So we have a lot. There's a lot of things. There's nothing that I can see myself being in conflict with, and if there was, I would disclose it right away. That's part of the job. If you feel you have a conflict on anything, if anyone has any conflict, they should be disclosing that, and that's something that I would do anyway. I've always disclosed if I had a conflict.
You think you'd recuse yourself if you felt?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. If there was something that was like that, but I would never ever say that, like, just because I'm serving on a committee. And if I'm serving on a committee that's to do with transportation, I don't understand how that would affect housing.
I have to cut it there. Steve Medeiros, you have a question for Ed Pacheco.
I do. Yeah, give me 1 second. So one of the questions I had, Ed, was in your recent interviews, you spoke strongly against local Chapter 40B developments like Hathaway Road, Tucker Road. But under Massachusetts law, if a town falls below a 10% affordable housing threshold, local planning boards lose total control and 40B overrides happen automatically. Simply saying no to projects doesn't change state law. What specific legislative reform or state funding mechanism will you introduce day one to help Dartmouth and New Bedford meet state affordability mandates without losing local municipal control?
That's a great question. And actually, this is the first time I've actually even heard you address 40B. So for me, I have taken a stance against certain 40B projects, not all 40B projects. So, for example, I took issue with the 40B project that was proposed for Tucker Road. And the issue with the project wasn't necessarily the size of the project, but it was some of the conditions that they were talking about. So, for example, New Bedford we're buying $2 million of water from New Bedford last year. This year, we're projected for $3 million. The builder there wanted a special permit to be able to put sprinkler systems in his project. He wanted waivers to ignore the tie-in fees for the sewage system, which our sewage system is already getting to capacity. So when we talk about 40B projects, it's not that I'm opposing the 40B projects. I'm opposed to the conditions that the developers are doing. Now, on that same token, we're talking about a 300-unit building that will be done potentially on Hathaway Road, called the Hathaway. And my issue with that is the size of the project. So again, you're dropping 300 units onto Hathaway Road, potentially 600 more vehicles a day. Again, an exorbitant amount of water that's going to be used. We're talking about 53,000 gallons of water a day. And I'm not the only one that's speaking out about this, to be clear. The DPW chief, Tim Barber, has raised concerns about the amount of wear and tear that it's going to add to our wastewater systems. The residents on Eisenhower Street, who are going to have 5-story buildings in their backyard where they used to have privacy, are speaking out about it. So on a legislative level, I recognize that we have a 10% threshold. We've been sitting at about 8.5%, and we have also already approved several projects. Now, once those units come on board...
Can you actually answer my question, though?
That's actually what I'm doing.
Yeah, we have a finite amount of time, obviously, so we need to get to it.
So I asked specifically...
So the answer to the question is legislatively...
Let him answer.
Yeah.
The question is legislatively is we have to work on a state level to try and look at that formula for 40B to make sure that 10% is right for all communities. It might not be right for a smaller community like Dartmouth that only has 32,000 people.
The question is because you're pointing out the flaws in the bill, but it's actually the law now, so what do you do legislatively to change that?
You change the law.
Okay, so that's very...
You build a coalition, you sit down with the towns and communities, you find a formula that works for them, and then you do your job as a state representative, and you draft the legislation, you build the coalition, and you modify the law. Just like we're trying to do within the new ballot, where they're trying to modify the law regarding guns, and they're also trying to modify the law about marijuana.
All right.
It's not set in stone. These aren't the 10 Commandments.
I got to cut you there. There's probably 351 different coalitions you're going to have to build, right? Because every town has its own unique situation. But okay, when we return, I'll give both of these gentlemen their closing moments, and then we will have to call it a day because we are coming up against the hour. And before we break, I want to thank both of you for coming in today. These are both the Democratic candidates for the 9th Bristol seat in the House of Representatives, Steve Medeiros and Ed Pacheco. Will be returning in just a moment with their closing remarks.
Here's what's happening this week on Town Square Sunday. We'll meet Stephanie Rocknack, the designer and creator of the Melville statue, to be unveiled Friday, August 14th in New Bedford. We'll also talk with Joe Ritter, programs director of the New Bedford Fishing Heritage Center, which is staging the second annual Scallopalooza, August 13th, to determine the top scallop shucker in New Bedford. And AHA director Kim Goddard will join us to discuss what's happening during AHA Night, August 13th in downtown New Bedford. I'm Jim Phillips. Join me for Town Square Sunday, Sunday morning at 6 and 11 on 1420 WBSM 99.5 FM.
Hello, New Bedford. This is Manny Resendiz. Tune in with the Retirement Factory so you can retire right. Saturday mornings at 6 and Sundays at 10 on 1420 WBSM.
All right, we are back, and Ed Pacheco, you have a minute to give us your closing statement about your candidacy as state rep.
Great. Hey, Ken, first off, thank you for having us today. Thank you to my opponent for coming out and sharing some of his views with us. Folks, there's a clear choice on September 1st on who could be the Democratic nominee, and I'd like to believe, based on my answers with you today, that it's me. As a hardworking person, a dad to 6 daughters, and a taxpayer in the 9th Bristol District, I understand on a day-to-day basis what the struggles are because I'm living them right next to you. Prior to me running for state representative, I worked 2 jobs because I need the extra income, just like many of the working families in Massachusetts need. But at the end of the day, we need someone who's going to go up there, be ready to work, and to scramble some eggs, and that's Ed Pacheco. So on September 1st, I respectfully ask for your consideration and that you vote for Ed Pacheco for state representative in the 9th Bristol District. And thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, Steve Medeiros.
Ken, thanks again for having me, and Ed, thank you for being here. When I've been out in the district, I'm listening to the residents. And my grandfather taught me 2 ears, 1 mouth. You should listen a lot more than you should be speaking. And so instead of going out there and telling people what, all these things, I'm out there listening to the concerns so that I can represent everyone day one at the State House. I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually been working at the State House, and by proposing legislation, I've testified in front of committees. I've actually worked on bills, so I understand the legislative process at a much deeper level because I've done it. For me, I have a family. I work hard for the community that I'm in because I could have had a much probably bigger business if I really chose to, but I chose to take a lot of my time and invest it in the community, working as a for the State House when I was up there advocating, but also in the community, as a coach, working at the feast, working at all these different organizations in the community. And I try not to talk about those things because it's about, really serving the people. So.
All right, Steve Medeiros, Ed Pacheco, I want to thank both of you for coming in today. I thought it was a very productive debate, and certainly there are some differences here for the people to decide on. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming in.
Appreciate it.
All right. I will call it here, and we want to thank you for listening, and I'll be back next Saturday. We'll talk about this debate, and as well as the one that took place 2 weeks ago between the Republican candidates. Have a great rest of your weekend, folks.
Statistics show roughly 20 veterans die by suicide every single day. And every day, more than 1,000 dogs are euthanized.
After the Navy, I became a recluse. I felt like I was still in combat mode.
I felt lost and confused.
For 15 years, Canines for Warriors has been the nation's leading nonprofit organization, providing service dogs for veterans battling PTSD and other invisible wounds of war.
Thanks to my service dog, Lady Cameo, I got my life back.
I'm able to get out of bed in the morning.
Be excited, happy about today.
More than 1,200 veteran lives saved. More than 2,500 dogs rescued. Families made whole again. Canines for Warriors is more than a service dog program. It's a promise that no veteran should ever walk alone. To learn more, visit caninesforwarriors.org. Canines for Warriors, saving veterans, rescuing dogs, restoring families.
WBSM and W258DR, New Bedford, a Town Square media station.
Surprise. Wait, do I know you? You use your Discover cashback card to earn 5% cashback on restaurants all quarter.
Yeah.
Now, it's payback time.
Whoa, hold on.
Go ahead.
Oh, you mean my Discover cashback.
I told you there'd be payback.
You know, you have a weird way of delivering good news.
I'm working on that.
Activate and earn 5% cash back at different categories each quarter on up to $1,500 in purchases.
Terms apply. See discover.com/5 for details.